κύριος Τόμας Kolster, που είναι μαζί μας. Τον καλώ στο βήμα και θα πάρω τη θέση μου για να τον ακούσω. Welcome.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Kalispera. Yeah, that was the Greek that I could. Sorry, I kind of had to try. First of all, thank you so much to the organizing committee for inviting me here, and to the Hellenic Advertising Association. I'm very happy to be here. Also, thank you to the musicians. I mean, it must be the first time that I actually had a little bit of music choir underneath my talk. So if they suddenly stopped playing, I might have said something wrong. So I'm here to talk about purpose, corporate purpose. But in many instances, purpose is like Pokemon. Everybody is searching for it, but nobody really knows why. So let's try and find to the bottom of why is purpose important. So I'm an ex-advertising guy, and I wrote a couple of years ago this little book, and it was my rallying cry to the advertising industry and to the big brands in this room to behave more responsible. And the very simple equation I came up with back in 2012, and this was fairly new in 2012, was that doing good for people and planet is good for brand and bottom line. But I'm not gonna talk too much here today about the power of purpose or why purpose pays, but I'm more gonna talk a little bit about how difficult it actually is to get purpose right, and that is very difficult. I know Greek is in a kind of worrisome situation right now, the Greek market. So why talk about hot topics like responsibility and purpose, when actually the thing that you want to do the most is just sell a little bit more? But what I will claim is that there's probably no better time for a brand and for a company to stand up and do something for people and to show care towards people, because they need it the most right now. But the one big question that I want to ask you here today, and I'm so happy there's so many good examples here today of companies that are doing good, but what is the good that you're really doing? Because it's gonna come under a lot of pressure. So what good have you really been doing lately? And I think the biggest challenge to the good that most brands are doing today and companies are doing today is that companies and brands no longer have the power. And that's probably the biggest change. No power whatsoever. The guy who holds the power is this little guy. It's you and I. 2 billion people on this planet right now have a mobile phone. And if you think about how much content you produce on a daily basis, how many pictures you took out there when you saw the beautiful venue, you communicate more heavily than any brand. If I look at my brother's oldest sister, her Instagram, her little Instagram account is so meticulous. She only takes pictures of cakes. She's more clever than most marketeers. So we need to face this. I'm actually going to promise you 3 things in this presentation. We had babies, we're also going to have puppies, and sorry, we're also going to have sex. It is a presentation about advertising, so sorry, okay? So these days, a lot of brands want to talk about all the good stuff they're doing. So brands that want to talk about female empowerment, and it got its own word, femvertising, so I'm not the only one who invents words like Goodvertising. Or this little word, gayvertising, so more and more brands speaking up for the good that they do in the world. And when I wrote my book back then, my reason for brands doing this was quite simple. Because if you think about it, today, because people have the power, brands need to talk to people about things they care about, things that matters to us, things like school, like education, like climate change. And that's why brands are suddenly starting to talk about these issues. But that also puts a lot of pressure on you in this room who are actually walking the talk rather than just talking. And that is the dangerous thing. So there's a more increasing danger of what I would call purpose washing, that people are not doing enough. Because most efforts I see of doing good, it's kind of like pissing in a wetsuit. It feels nice and warm, but it quickly begins to stink. So we need to avoid the stinking part here today. And giving a damn is in many ways the new black, if you think about it. Especially young people, they want to work for companies that have a purpose. We heard Mr. Anthony talk about 7 out of 10 people actually wanting to put money behind companies with a purpose. So this is all very, very, very good. So the thing I'm going to talk about today, and like any other story, there's always a villain, something that you want to fight against, something that you want to avoid. And in my story here today, you can probably guess it, it's what I would call a statistic. No, that was not it. That's going to be the next slide. But I'm going to talk about the massive potential and purpose first a little bit. Because this is a survey done by GlobeScan. And GlobeScan asked experts from 15 countries, what are the most purposeful companies out there? And as you see, the only one that is really kind of starkly in front of everybody else is Unilever, followed by companies like Patagonia, Interface, Nestle, GE, Nike, Coca-Cola. So what does this show? This shows there's a big opportunity for leadership. There's a big opportunity to take a position to become a purposeful brand. A brand that does more than just selling, but actually wants to do something good in society. But back to the villain, back to the one thing that we wanted to fight against. And that is what I would call the two-headed purpose monster. And this is where it becomes complicated, okay? Because on the one side, you will see the bull. That's a strong, powerful animal. You'll recognize it from outside the New York Stock Exchange, right? And that says profit, 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 profit. On the other side, we have the cute little lamb that says, you know, purpose, let's do good, let's live up to responsibility and all that stuff. And that's very difficult to get that to work because it's pulling in two different directions. It doesn't become much more easy when most of you probably add a mission, a vision, and probably most of you have 5 to 10 values, right? How are you going to remember, 5 to 10 values, a mission, a vision, and then you add the purpose? You're building a card house that's very, very difficult to navigate. And you end up with something like this, something that's not really movable. And that is the danger of the two-headed purpose monster. So I'm going to share a couple of what I would call monster busters with you here today, okay? So the first one is your purpose embedded in your brand's mission? So how can you take all this mission, vision, purpose, values, and make them very aligned so it becomes a singular movement? So I'm going to look at a couple of examples of companies who have tried to do this, okay? So the first one is ExxonMobil. They apparently have a lot to say, so this is their mission statement. They say, ExxonMobil Corporation is committed to being the world's premier petroleum and petrochemical company. To that end, we must continuously achieve superior financial and operating results. So that was the bull talking, right? The powerful animal. And then we have the cute little lamb saying, while adhering to the highest standards of business conduct. So we feel the dilemma already there. And for those of you who know ExxonMobil and unfortunately how they've been doing in press lately, not super well, sued by the New York state attorney for lying about climate change. So when you don't get these things right, something doesn't work between that bull and that little lamb. Those two heads are not talking well together. Let me share another example with you. So this is Walmart's mission statement, and I really like this one. It's saving people money so they can live better. Isn't that a simple mission statement? It's something that we can all remember. If you stop an employee, everybody can remember this little simple mission statement. And somebody might say, what about the vision? What can they fight for on the long term? But if you actually have been to Walmart, how many of you have been to a Walmart in the US? Just hands up. Quite a few of you. Okay, good. So you will know what I talk about when I talk about Walmartians. This is a certain type of Walmart customer, and they look kind of like this. So when Walmart talks about making people live better lives, they are actually taking on a pretty big and bold challenge. So you can align those two things. But also to ask yourself, walking the talk, how many of your products and services actually do live up to that purpose you put forward? 5%, 10%. If you say to people that you want to make them live more healthier lives, how much candy are you allowed to sell? So these questions are important. One of the brands, now we had Unilever up there, one of the brands that Unilever have in their portfolio is Axe. You all know Axe, right? At least the men does. When I was a teenager, I wore Axe Marine. So the AdWords were all about, this is the sex part, the more you spray, the more you get. And I believed that idea when I was a teenage guy. Women didn't show up that well. Got a little bit disappointed about that advertising slogan. But if you're Paul Polman, the CEO of Unilever, you could ask yourself, how well does Axe fit into that portfolio? And he has, over the last 3 years, done a tremendous effort in turning that brand around and talking about things like peace, talking about things like male suicide, some pretty heavy topics. So a last little example from a mission statement, and I'll see how many of you can guess this one. They have a lot on heart here as well. It is our goal to continue to synergistically initiate high standards in information in order to continue to assertively revolutionize timely technology for the high standards. Anybody know that company? Nobody? Nope. You know why? Because it doesn't exist. It's made by the mission statement generator. So if you're not sincere about this thing, save a lot of money consultants, save a lot of money on CSR consultants and advertising agencies, because you can put all the words in here and you're gonna have a beautiful, beautiful mission statement, okay? Very easy. But now I introduced the two-headed monster. Let's kind of look at some of the monsters that you will be able to find out there, and you might recognize quite a few of them. So this is the first monster. This is probably one of the most common monsters you'll find out there. The one head is a little bit bigger than the other, so, you know, kind of like the Exxon one. The profit head is talking a little bit louder than the cute little purpose one. So I'm sure that quite a few you know this particular monster. But let's talk about another monster, and as you see, these are all from storytelling. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So you say something good in the light of day, but during the night, something else happens. So a very classic two-headed monster, right? And probably the best example, and I can say this because I had Volkswagen in my book, is of course Volkswagen. I think a lot of us at that time had high expectation and probably would have put Volkswagen up as a purposeful brand and somebody you would be looking up to. But something happened. So beware of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. There's another two-headed monster that's very common where I come from, in Scandinavia, because people are very modest and they don't want to talk about all the good stuff they're doing for society. So they tend to keep quiet. But the problem is when they keep quiet, they're doing a lot of stuff. Most of the time they're doing a lot of stuff. But when they keep quiet, somebody else talks about it. And what happens is suddenly that company feel, oh, but somebody's taking all the limelight, you know, customers are going that way, the young people want to work for that company, and they suddenly come out and they talk about a lot of stuff. And that is the Clark Kent and Superman one, this one. So it can also be a danger to keep quiet too long and then suddenly come out and talk about all the good stuff. So we should have another monster buster actually. Does your brand leave a positive impact or just a positive impression? And this is a very important one. What is it in fact that you're doing? What is it that you can prove that you're doing to society to make a difference? So the puppy, I promised you a puppy, right? We had the baby, we had the sex, we had the puppy now, good. So when we talk about doing good, it often ends up with being kicking the puppy a little bit less, okay? So you say 10% recycled or 10% less waste or 5% less waste, but essentially you're still kicking the puppy. You're just kicking the puppy a little bit less. So you're still not really that good. And the thing that's happening right now within purpose, and especially in a global perspective, is that these things are moving tremendously fast. So one of the concepts are not about minimizing impact and the negative impact you have, but actually giving back to society. And one of them is Ian Cheshire. He's not with Kingfisher anymore, but he talks about net positive, that a company actually, in their case, actually plant more trees than they use. So they want to make up for all the stuff they do. Another example could be P&G. They have just launched their Head and Shoulders packaging made out of beach plastics in France. So actually cleaning some of the damage you have done. So this is not just about kicking the puppy a little bit less. This is actually about stopping kicking that puppy at all. So why is it like that? And I guess that why we think Homer Simpson is such a funny character is because we identify with him. And I think most of us actually feel like two-headed purpose monsters, don't we? I mean, we know we should recycle more, we should be bicycling more. And essentially, it's not weird that that behavior goes into companies, because companies are just, 1,000 people working together towards that purpose or mission, vision, values, right? So when you go down in the supermarket and you see those jeans on sale and it's only like €5, and the little angel says, that's a bargain, you should take it. And the little good guy says, there's something up. But you take the pants because it's €5 and somebody else is gonna pay that high price, right? Again, the two-headed purpose monster is on play, right? So where are these things heading and where is purpose heading? And I think it's developing quite quickly. I don't know how many of you recognize this guy. No? It's Mr. Schultz, and he's the CEO of Starbucks. And he's on Time magazine because all of the good stuff he's doing for the US. Education, veterans, a lot of that good stuff. I mean, Trump, he was happy to be on Time magazine. I just don't think he got the concept of Time magazine. You can both be on Time magazine for doing good stuff and bad stuff. Hitler was on Time magazine, right? But don't tell Mr. Trump. But Howard Schultz was actually on Time magazine for doing a lot of good stuff. And Starbucks is one of the companies that you traditionally would talk about as a very purposeful company. But we talked about impression and impact and really being very honest about what is the true impact of this company. And the problem is right now that a lot of people question Starbucks because Starbucks pay as little tax as an Austrian sausage stall. Or in the UK, the same as one plumber. Talk a big, big coffee chain. But what is even more challenging to this is the new generation, the young people. And the young people think differently about this. And one of them come from my neighboring country, Sweden. Her name is Marita Lacroix, and she actually wanted a job in Starbucks because she believed in the purpose of Starbucks. So she went in there, and she got rejected because she got blue hair. So